before we begin, I want to introduce several people who are very important to this conference. First of all, Dr. Wanli Cheng, who is the chairman of the Design and Industry Department in San Francisco State, who for the past 6 months I drove driven crazy coming in. We've got to do this for this conference, we've got to do this. And he's always given in. So he's been a tremendous support. This really is the second international conference that we had last year. We had our first one. I think by next year we'll have our act together and it'll be really, really smooth. The second person I would like to introduce is Leopoldo Mahler. Leopoldo is the director of the Napa Contemporary Arts Foundation. That's for both of you. The Napa Contemporary Arts Foundation, along with the Left Foundation and San Francisco State University, has been responsible for supporting this project. Tonight is, of course, a lecture, but all week long, starting on this past Monday, we've had a very intense, as you'll see, sort of tired look on some of the students' faces, seminar workshop. And students are working, and they will be working until this Sunday, or till they drop one or the other, on a project that is being conducted by one of the speakers tonight, Mario Marino, who is staying with us from Buenos Aires, and I'll introduce him in a few minutes. I'd like to also acknowledge several people in the department who, along with myself, have kind of burnt the candle at both ends of the semester. Cici Iandoli, who is helping us out. And Jim Beebe, who's in charge of the design program. Who is on his way from LAX, maybe from Clapper, Millennium. Somebody asked me before, said, well, this is a round table, does that mean we get pizzas here? Well, we're not delivering, but we do have a reception afterwards, which we'd like to invite you all to attend, and it'll be in the Casa Blanca room, which is across the way. And the Hess collection, which is associated with Napa Contemporary Arts, has donated the wine. It's very good wine. I had some last night, so good argument. I'd like to start out just giving you a sense of the theme of this lecture. The entire course operated this week is called Design for Society, and it really started out of an interest among the people who are involved in this program that we want to create a definition of design that's much more than just fancy renderings or sexy objects, but really coming up with creative solutions to problems that are very significant. And rather than have individual speakers come up and give a long discussion about their theory of design, we felt the best thing is to present different perspectives on design from the work of these various presenters, and hopefully you'll generate from that, I think, a better understanding of what design can do. I stole a few slides from Mario Marino to start this off, but I feel okay because he stole them from National Geographic. So hopefully we'll get this down right. Of course, we have turn projector on. Rather than talk about what he was going to do this week, he just said, here are the protagonists of design for society, or what you call social design. I think the images really speak for themselves, so I hope I will try to find one other image, which I think is just people, just people in general. It doesn't have to necessarily be third world, can be anywhere. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mario Marino from the University of Buenos Aires. He's a professor in product analysis. A great deal of his time is spent in research. He works with a research unit at the university in social design. And I'd like to thank you for not only being here tonight, but putting on this incredible course. The energy is just fantastic at school, and I hope that in the future we'll have many more opportunities like that, and hope that you'll be with us again. Mario Marino.
Thank you very much. First of all, I should like to make a comment about the course. And when Brian talked about the fantastic course, I think this is possible thanks to the raw material that we have. You know? For me, the most important thing are the students, and we have marvelous people. You know? This is thanks to many things. First of all, for his own intelligence, and second, for the education that they have, which is, I think, is thanks to the professor that have this university. Secondly, I want to present my excuse due to my English. Well, like Brian said, I'm a regular professor in the University of Buenos Aires, and I dedicate probably the whole of my life to the research of the social design. I'm going to show you part of my work, and with absolutely different strategies. We are going to start talking about the Antarctica. I worked for many years making research how the people live in the Antarctica. And until we start to make our generation of buildings that you are going to see in the spring, the most of the people, without any distinction from nations, except US, which is have a marvelous base for many years ago. The rest of the people live like in the slum, and with many problems. For example, I'm going to tell you one problem. Nobody has a bathroom, for example. And to go to the toilet means extraordinary psychological decision, because the toilets, yes, it's true. The toilet is only a hole made in the ice with 24 degrees below zero, and this is quite difficult. Okay, we're going to start showing it. This is a general view of the environment. We work in Iceland, or Maranview is the name of this place. This is a personal impression. One of the elements that most impressed me is this sentence. This is a project I'm making in the 70s. It's a base to be it's only a project, no? In the moment it was a new approach to the resolution of the problems of how to live in that country. This is an idea. Well, this is the another view of the environment. This is the protagonist of one of our jobs, the summary of our work. This is one of the, this is part of it. This is a hangar made in reinforced plastic. It's a big construction. It's 27 meters wide, 11 meters high. This is 50 meters long. This is another picture. You can ask why we selected the reinforced plastic or the GRP. This is due that this material is the best material that we can choose due to the characteristics of this splendid raw material. The resistance is bigger than the steel in low temperatures, like but there's reasonable choice. This is a tryout that we make in the continent because all the parts must fit exactly. We numerate the part with this assembly, we put in the airplane and we send to the Antarctica. In the Antarctica you can make any mistake. This is the whole work. I want to mention you that this structure supports 300 kilometers per hour. And one of the most difficult design problems that we have is the gate. We developed a special gasket to put all around the gate, an inflatable gasket, which was produced here in the United States. It's a aeronautical technique, but it's the only port that we can find in order to seal the whole entrance of this is the back. This is the interior. In this place we used to play football with our neighbor, the English, which is near us. Okay. We're going to talk about one of my works referred to the disaster area. Before I came to San Francisco, we received one of the biggest rain in the last 30 years. We received in one day 143 millimeters, which is terrible because in terms in the, for example, if you make an interpretation through the view of the meteorologist, this is roughly 10 inches or more or less, no? But in terms of the flood, is 1 meter, 2 meters, and something like that. No? So this is a newspaper. This is what happened really. No? Take a look, for example, the windows that is covered by the water. This is another view. This is the country. This is what happened with the farms. And this is the design that we produce. It's a 6-wheel drive an amphibious vehicle. This design received the Diploma of Merit to design for developing countries for the International Council of Societies of Industrial Design. Here we have filmmakers. It's a trial. This is an application. That's all for the video. I have one more. A little fish. This is my last job. This is a personal research. I have Elizabeth with many applications for the handicapped people and the people that must stay for a long period in bed. The main concept design is to avoid the scratch, which is one of the worst problems in the world. The principal or the main quality of this bed is that this plus the center of gravity of the human body, changing slowly and gently the position of the body and permitting refreshing of the skin. This is the first computer design approach. Of course, this is an electric bed. This is a prototype that we made in order to check the ergonomic approach. It was a first prototype. It's managed personally, like this is personal. Take a look how in conventional position she has, how comfortable it is. This is due to one of the size of the back to use this effect. Well, this is the final prototype. It's in trial in one of our hospitals with very good results until now. I'm going to, if you permit me, I'm going to review the different kind of disease or problems that this builds about. For example, about scars, which are systematically reduced in patients with very long treatments, simplifies the handling of hemiplegic and paraplegic patients, simplifies the handling of patients in the third age, which is very important. Improve the physical attitude of the patient during convalescence. Convalescence time is reduced in most of the cases. Reduce the time of nurses' assistance and allow the attention of one patient to the quicker recovery of infections. And also allow an extremely simple and agreeable handling of the patient for study, treatment, and cure. And this is my last picture today. Okay. When I finish, I want to make you one comment. Sometimes I ask me why, in place of to develop my life in the products, the common products, which I worked by many years because I was manager of engineering manager in the automotive industry by 17 years. And why I choose? I choose because I choose a way of life, which is a way of life. To produce design in the social field, because it's the only form that I can give satisfaction to the main problems of the people. Social design is for the satisfaction of the primary necessities of the people, and which is the way I selected. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. And the rest of our panel is here. Welcome. The next speaker is Peter Felser, who is a professor at San Francisco State University in the Department of Engineering. Peter is involved in more projects than I can name, but one in particular that he's going to talk about tonight is the Wheeled Mobility Center in San Francisco. And rather than my messing up and not defining everything correctly, I'll have to describe it. So ladies and gentlemen, Peter Felser.
To talk about wheelchair production in developing nations. And talking about that tonight, I'm first going to introduce the Wheel Mobility Center, which is here at San Francisco State University in the Division of Engineering. We established the center in 1989 to improve the wheel mobility devices that were available to people with disabilities. I'm then going to talk about worldwide need for wheelchairs, introduce some of the history of Ralph Hotchkiss, who is the co-director of the Wheel Mobility Center with myself. Ralph is a paraplegic wheelchair rider, MacArthur Fellow, a wonderful inventor, designer, and unfortunately is in Washington right now, which is why I'm here talking to you rather than him. So I'll talk about the history of his 12 years of work around the world developing better wheelchairs. Then talk with you about the UN project that we're working on developing. And finally, finish up with about 8 minutes of slides. The Wheel Mobility Center is dedicated to providing better wheel mobility products throughout the world. We divided the center's work into 2 areas, the domestic wheelchair work and the international wheelchair work. Ralph has been taking care of the international wheelchair work, and I've been doing the domestic wheelchair work. So I'll speak just very briefly about the domestic work before we get down to talking about the international work. We are currently working on 3 different projects in the domestic wheelchair work. One is for Caltrans, where we're assessing accessibility for new rail car designs that they're going to install in the Peninsula Commute Service. We're also doing a wheelchair injury survey to find out how to make safer wheelchairs for the Center for Disease Control. And we have a 3rd standard product design type development project that's under the sponsorship of National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research, jointly sponsored with Quickie Design, which is one of the probably 2nd largest wheelchair manufacturer in California. The domestic work runs at a budget this year of about $300,000. So wheelchairs are pretty big business in the United States, as you'll see, and there's a lot of interesting work to do on that. Our international wheelchair work, which I'll spend the bulk of my time talking about tonight is divided into three areas. First of all, research and development of new products for the international market, training people to build those devices in developing nations, and providing consulting services and consultation to wheelchair shops throughout the world. So directing our attention to need, it's always surprising to people that in the United States, 1 in 200 people uses a wheelchair. About half that population is an invisible population in institutions or hospitals, but there's a large number of wheelchairs kicking around. Data on the need for wheelchairs in the world is not existent yet. But what we've done, and UN statisticians say it's as good a figure, it's a good way of making an estimate as anything else is, extrapolated this figure of 1 in 200 in the United States and applied it to the population in developing nations. And we come up with a worldwide need of about 20 million wheelchairs currently. There's a supply of only about 200,000 wheelchairs, or 1% of the need currently out there. So, 99% of the people that need wheelchairs in developing countries are either getting around poorly or most likely not getting around at all. I'll show you some slides as we progress. I want to talk real briefly about the history of Hotchkiss's work in developing nations, because the philosophy of this work has really infused our approach and still seems very sound. We believe that wheelchairs in developing nations need to be locally manufactured rather than imported. And they need to be made out of, if they're going to be locally manufactured, they need to be made out of local material. The reason for that is quite simply that people in developing nations cannot afford the $500 to $1,200 that a wheelchair in the United States costs. And the other reason is that if you could donate those chairs to people in developing countries, the conditions under which the chairs are used are so totally different that very quickly they break down and there's no way to repair them. And so hundreds and thousands of wheelchairs have been sent to various countries throughout the world, and they're lying in a big pile, basically unused because they've broken down. We also feel strongly that people in developing nations have a greater need than people in the United States for high-quality, high-performance wheelchairs. The conditions that they have to get around in are much worse than the conditions that one might encounter in the United States. Therefore, they actually need chairs that are as good as the best of the U.S. chairs rather than cheap chairs. The other mistake that we feel is made quite often is the idea that people who are not very well informed, who are not wheelchair riders, think that one size of wheelchair fits all. And so you put a child in a wheelchair that's 18 inches wide, and the child's trying to propel themselves with a motion like this, rather than with the kind of racing stroke, good efficient biomechanical stroke that I can use. Generally, the quote, standard chair here in the United States, if they wanted to try and fit one size, would be an 18-inch chair. Most people in developing nations are quite a bit slighter than that, and generally they're requiring a chair that's at least 2 inches narrower. So you need to have custom-fit chairs, just the way people who ride wheelchairs in the United States can. A chair that fits you, that fits the person. The third important aspect of our philosophy is consumer involvement. So much wheelchair manufacturing is being done by people that just want to turn out wheelchairs and make money. And you really need to get input from the customer, what they need in the particular locale. General Motors would not try and employ engineers who weren't car drivers, and yet most wheelchair design is currently not being done by people who are wheelchair riders. Big mistake. The other thing that we try and do in developing nations is stimulate independent living. If you provide a person with a wheelchair, does this mean you now have a beggar in a wheelchair? Hopefully not. We see the wheelchair as the means by which people will go out and be able to live independently, hopefully have a job, and get around rather than remain parked in the back room of the family house, taken care of by the family. The design techniques and the methodologies which we use are interesting. We patent nothing. This is only true of our international work. Domestic work, we're very careful about patents. But on our international work, we patent nothing. We stimulate communication among the various designers. We rip off everyone we can, and we pass it around. And it is created a very lively, excited bunch of wheelchair designers all over the world. We throw out designs, we get more back than we put out. It's just really exciting, and that relates to the last important point of our philosophy. Wheelchair design is never static. We're always making improvements. Going from current designs, our dreams are four-wheel designs, low-cost power chairs for developing nations, etc. So we see it as an ongoing process that will involve consumers and manufacturers throughout the world. The history of the International Wheelchair Building Project is as follows. Hotchkiss visited Nicaragua in 1980 and very quickly saw the need for Nicaragua in the middle of the war, lots of very young, strong amputees mainly, and some spinal cord injured people who basically couldn't get around, not because they weren't strong enough to get around, just because they didn't have chairs. And so they worked with a veterans group there and developed the first prototype of the chair, which has come to be called the Torbellino, or the Whirlwind. And this chair was a relatively full-featured folding chair. We felt that the folding aspect was important so the chair could be transported in public transit. It was lightweight, about 2 pounds heavier. It was about a 30 to 32 pound chair compared to 8 to 28 pound chair, which is about the lightest folding chair here in the United States. The hospital model chairs that you're familiar with probably weigh somewhere between 35 and 40 pounds. If you're a wheelchair rider, and I'm a half-time wheelchair rider, that difference in weight is amazing. The chair was inexpensive to produce. It could be produced in Nicaragua at that time and sold at a profit for about $150 to $200. Contains $80 of materials and requires 40 hours of labor from the skilled craft, a relatively skilled craftsman. The price of the chair depends tremendously on the labor rate in the country. In Sri Lanka, where the labor rate is lower, we can sell chairs, or they can sell chairs at a profit for $100. It's locally manufactured, and it's custom fitted by the manufacturer to the person with the disability. I should stress that Ralph's work in Nicaragua indicated a tremendous need to provide training. And so we not only do the design work, but we go in and do a whole technology transfer package to train people, help them find local materials. We've trained about 150 mechanics worldwide, set up 25 shops in 18 different countries. The work that Ralph did in Nicaragua was supported by Appropriate Technology International. That went on for 5 years and throughout South and Central America under USAID funding. AID changed its priorities, and in 1987 Hotchkiss came to the university, and we focused on developing improved design Torbellino 2. The reason we had to change the design, we were changing the countries that we were supplying wheelchairs to. We weren't supplying wheelchairs at this point to just the least developed countries, but we were looking at countries like Russia and Eastern Europe, where they were used to not small-scale manufacturing, but medium-scale manufacturing. So we had to develop a frame that could be adjusted after manufacture to custom fit. In other words, these new chairs had to be able to be produced in larger, more centralized areas rather than small shops, and then sent out and fitted. And also, because we were working in Russia they had a standard, I think it's a 26-inch door width, which is 2 inches too narrow for the Russian wheelchairs and just about any other wheelchair. It's certainly 2 inches too narrow for the chairs that we designed. So we had to design a chair that, with the person sitting in the chair, they could narrow it enough to get through the doorway and then open up the chair again. And there's several other features which I'm running out of time that I'm not going to go into, but just trying to cut down the use of imported parts, developing better bearings, better caster, front wheel casters. I'm running over time, so I'm going to talk only very briefly about the United Nations project. Basically, we're now, we produce, we figure somewhere between around 10,000 chairs over a 10-year period. It's not a drop in the bucket. There's only a drop in the bucket. So we've set ourselves, once we looked at the worldwide problem, we set ourselves a goal of producing 30 million wheelchairs over the next 30 years. This is something that we, being the Wheel Mobility Center, is a project that we can participate in, but we can't handle ourselves. It looks as if the United Nations is taking this project on. We're in the middle of negotiations. We'll be working with Ralph Hotchkiss' old employers, Appropriate Technology International, and the United Nations, Rehab International. And the problem when you look at the big picture is not just the technical aspects, but the business aspects, coming up with the money to purchase the wheelchairs, doing advocacy work so once you give people wheelchairs, there's something for them to do in their countries, and also taking care of statistics and evaluation. Without going any further on the UN work, let me just go to the slides. And this is Ralph Hotchkiss. I talked about him. This is Ralph in India. The guy is a real intrepid and amazing traveler. And I took a wheelchair around the world on my sabbatical. Accessibility in the rest of the world is nothing. It's much, much worse than it is here in California or in the United States. I'm much more impressed with Ralph after having made that trip myself. This is Nicaragua. This is the way people with disabilities get around when there aren't wheelchairs. People do want to get around. The woman in the flat skirt is a paraplegic, and she's being pulled around by a guy who's got a big smile on his face. He's having a great time pulling her around. She's a real beautiful woman, and he seems to be having a nice time serving her. She doesn't have much control over where she goes or what she does, and that's something that we see as too bad. Here's the way people without wheelchairs get around all over the world, and that's riding what are called caster carts. You see the fellow to the right of the wheelchair sitting on a cart with wheels. He's got what we call hand irons for self-propulsion, and you can get around okay. You don't go anywhere very fast, and you can imagine what this is like in rough terrain. Absolutely impossible. Here's a slide indicating some of the problems that most U.S. wheelchair riders don't face in getting around on their daily activities. This is rough terrain gravel in the third world, and that's one of the reasons our hospital model chairs that have been exported all over the world and are broken down so much. This is a hospital model chair broken down. You see these all over. This is in the workshop in Nicaragua. You'll notice they're very cleverly mounting an industrial caster, the front caster of the wheelchair. Not a great solution, but this guy's a paraplegic. He wants wheels and he wants to get around, and he's doing a good job of trying to do that. Omar Talavera from Nicaragua. is now living here in the United States, finishing up a mechanical engineering degree at Berkeley, master mechanic from the Nicaragua workshop. This shows the kind of fabrication techniques. We use a lot of jigs and fixtures, brass welding, and mild steel tubing, available all over the world. You can also use arc welding. A picture of people in Nicaragua using arc welding. And here's the Torbellino 1. A nice looking chair, fast, lightweight, real elegant, I think, and very efficient. Bicycle tires, in this case wooden casters, everything but the steel ball bearings are available in most developing countries. Fully folding footrest, nice looking chair. And here is the same young woman that you saw in the early picture, after having received one of the first chairs that came out of the Nicaraguan workshop after Ralph visited there. You'll notice that she is propelling herself up and down curves, has a lot more mobility, and real happy. She can get around easily over rough ground, and within the first month of her having this new chair, there was a wheelchair race in Nicaragua. Lots of folks riding wheelchairs. She beat all of them. And now she's wearing a smile. This is Ralph working in Manila in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, they had a workshop going already before Ralph arrived. And what Ralph was able to do was to bring the Torbellino design to them, and what he was able to get from them were better jigs and fixtures that could be used throughout the world. So they really helped out tremendously in setting up some of the technology transfer techniques that we're still currently using for mass production. I showed these slides to show you, this is the head of the Philippine workshop, to show you the independent living aspect of our work. This workshop is supporting 20 families in the Philippines. Most of them have children, and these people are doing as well as anyone else is doing in the Philippines right now. Small businesses, which is not great, but in better economic times, they were supporting themselves quite well. We're now in La Jolla, Mexico, way up in the mountains above Puerto Vallarta, about a 4-hour trip up over rough path. Rehab center up there. This gives you a sense. The chairs are really designed to be manufactured in a blacksmith shop rather than a fancy machine shop. And a blacksmith is very capable of repairing most of the problems that would go on with these chairs. And here we are working in the shop in La Jolla. Again, people who are chair riders turning out chairs that they themselves will ride and hopefully be able to sell and make a living through that. And here's a young woman. You get a sense of the difficult terrain that these chairs are designed to operate on. Even with chairs, there's still plenty of accessibility problems left to solve. Here we are in Peru. That looks like a real tough one. But there are wheelchair workshops in there in Peru. Here we are in Siberia, in an Aeroflot helicopter factory. They're making wheelchairs on the side. It was for this factory that we designed the Torbellino 2. Master mechanics there who, in their off hours, produce wheelchairs for the domestic market. And also wheelchair mechanics in Fiji, turning out chairs. These are people who were living in a rehabilitation institute. We did a 3-week wheelchair workshop there. And we were there with a team of 4 people, including 2 children. And that's not an experience I'm eager to repeat too quickly. It was a handful. But successfully turned out 3 chairs. And these people are now capable of producing their own chairs. And again, we have 3 happy chair riders. And I wish we had the video facilities, because one of these fellows, just a guy named Penne, in the middle, was an amputee, very athletic guy. He was used to riding a hospital model chair. And yes, when he sat in that chair, I asked him, Penne, how do you like the chair? He cried. He said, it's like having my legs back. He had only been an amputee for about 8 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker is Susan Goldsman, who is the G in a company called MIG, Moore, Icafano, and Goldsman. And Susan works as a planner. Her primary interest is in play spaces and in adaptive toys for children. I'm going to have the pleasure of working with Susan this semester on a project that will be funded through an NEA design grant in conjunction with Mr. Phil Evans in the back, who was part of the university. So Susan, thank you for coming.
Our work is a little different than the kind of work you've been seeing. We do landscape design and interior design. Does that have a light? What we've learned over the years, we actually got started in this whole field by running programs for kids, integrating kids with and without disabilities. And what we learned is that you can't just create a place. You have to be able to understand the programs and the kind of activities you want that place to support, and what kind of policies and management goals you're trying to accomplish. So to get good design, design that works, you have to really integrate those three aspects of place program management. I'm going to show you one project, and I thought since we were talking about process, I would take one project again. And this is a park down Menlo Park. And this is what it looked like when we were called in. This equipment had just been purchased. And I'm always preaching that this kind of equipment is really designed more for maintenance people and for adults than for kids. On top of this kind of equipment is absolutely possibly used by most people with disabilities or kids with disabilities. Plus it's sitting in a sea of sand. So, you can't see that. The way we usually begin a project is really to investigate with the people who use the space what they see in the space. It's the whole front end where we spend a lot of time developing an understanding of the behavioral aspects of the place as well as what people want to see there. Starting off here with a community workshop where we've invited people of all ability levels to come and walk the space with us, to tell us what they saw there and what they'd like to do there. We also involve kids, bringing kids with and without disabilities to the place so they begin to understand what we're trying to do. And it's not so important what the kids make. It's more important what they tell you. What came out of this particular workshop was the need for water in this place. And this actual workshop convinced the Board of Supervisors to allow water to be in the park. We do very traditional kinds of landscape architectural analysis, but overlaying that as well, we start looking at the kinds of barriers that exist in the place. Barriers for access and barriers for kids. One thing that a lot of designers wind up doing is creating hostile environments for children without even knowing it. Doing the normal kinds of analysis here, looking at the surfacing in the park to see what is generally accessible and what isn't. Then doing analysis by grouping and rethinking the way the space is used and how you want to use it in the future. To the more traditional microclimate kind of analysis. And all this information gets overlaid until you have a picture of the space. This is a behavioral analysis. Each Each one of those dots represents a person or 10 people using the space over a period of time. And what was interesting about this, when we were brought in, the parks people wanted to get rid of the picnic tables in this area because the picnic area was impacting the tree roots. And to see the amount of people that were here versus anywhere else in the park, and all this land given over to formal games areas, really gave you a picture of how underused that park was. Involving not only the people who use the park, but the people who are going to maintain the park is very important in these areas. So we always try to do some sort of analysis where we look at all the different kinds of elements we're recommending to go into the park, and all the different ways in which you can look at it, from a maintenance end, from a cost end, from an accessibility end, from a child's play area. And you sit down with each one of the user groups, and when I use user groups, it's not only people who use it, but people who maintain it, and come up with an agreement of how this park should operate. Also, as part of this thing, standards have to be set. So when future renovations happen, you have a set of standards that you're continually using. This one is looking at all the different kinds of materials and surfacing and such that can go into the park and will go into the park. And this one is actually based on what we call levels of access. It's absolutely impossible to make an environment fully accessible, especially outside. So you look at different levels of access and how you're going to try to treat the whole environment with an understanding that the main areas have to be fully accessible, but there are some areas that will be more difficult and challenging, and you don't want to get rid of those kind of places, but you want to make them available as well. Going through the whole drawing process and getting everybody involved in making decisions, winding up with the built environment. I'm going to go into the tower is reminiscent of the history. So the environment is layered with meaning and history and play value and all sorts of other things. This was the site of the old flood mansion. But in the top of the tower is a wind chime. The wind chime acts as an audio cue for the visually disabled. A sign system was specially created to allow, here the map, allow the ground lines for a person who has a hard time seeing, but to use the ground line as a way of walking around the park. These tiles were also created and tested so a 4.5-year-old could understand what was happening in the park. And additionally, people with disabilities were depicted doing normal kinds of things in the park just like everyone else. Since we were stuck with that equipment that the county had just purchased, we tried to figure out how we're going to at least make part of it accessible. And really, to be honest, none of it's really accessible. But you can take a tire swing and make it somewhat accessible. So by putting down a rubberized surface to make it safe, so when a child falls on it, you're not hurting yourself, it allows part of that equipment to at least be accessed. One thing I always want to caution people is it's not right for us to put limitations on other people. You provide the opportunity to get somewhere, and then you allow the individual to create their own limits. This is another area that came out directly from those workshops. When we were talking with people who were wheelchair users, the thing they wanted to do the most in this park was get on the grass. So it's a simple thing, we thought, to be able to get someone onto the grass. By creating a retaining wall, the height of a wheelchair transfer, we thought that the person could go up there, transfer over to the wall, and get on. Well, it works somewhat. And this is where the place and the program and the management come in. When people started using it, we had a sandblast to get a little roughness because when it rained, a child can walk on it and slip and hurt themselves very badly, so we had to rough it up. But that roughness has created friction, so when you try to slide your legs over and you have clothes on, it prevents you from doing that. But because we had the place, the program, and the management integrated, we now have transfer boards. They're just they're plastic cutting boards, the kind we use in our kitchens. and we put them in the radio station so a person could take it, slip it under their butt, slip it over here, and then transfer in and out easily. But that couldn't be done if there wasn't a policy there that allowed that to be done. These are other kinds of things, very simple ideas that an elderly person or a person who has a hard time getting up and down needs arms and needs heavy arms onto a bench. This is the infant area that overlooks all the areas inside. Here, a mother coming with many kids or younger children and older children can look out and view the whole area. This is also designed here as a big slab bench. Any of you who have young children know that when you go anywhere with a young child, you look like a truck. You're carrying your diapers, you're carrying your food, you're carrying your toys, and so you want a place to plop. And so that provides that plopping place. Again, sand and water are two of the most important play elements a child can have because it's allowing them to manipulate the environment. So just by putting a spring-loaded faucet next to some sand, you literally have created hours and hours of play opportunities for kids. This is beside that area. We call this the fantasy play area, where we developed a series of playhouses designed so a wheelchair can get in and around and through it with no roof, so homeless people wouldn't want to live there. It's also a place for, I said that very nicely, didn't I? Places for teenagers also to hang out when younger kids weren't using it. What also this park had, which we discovered as part of our walking analysis, this was all overgrown when we got there. But these are Australian tea trees. They're wonderful, gigantic bushes. And to a kid, it looks like a mini forest. We cleaned it all out and put a lot of wood chips down for resilient surfacing. And it becomes a place where you can gather or actually use it as a playing surface. Walking over to the other side now, we have a multi-level sand area designed so a person in a wheelchair could play in the sand if they didn't want to get into the sand. And it's designed as multi-layers. You can transfer out into the sand here, or you can use the access here. And for adults to play with their children, or for children to play with. And it's designed this way, so this area of grass catches the sand so it doesn't go down into the pathway system. Now, any of you who have ever maintained anything understand that you have to lift a mower up a foot and a half to actually mow this grass. So you really had to have the maintenance people thoroughly involved in this project, or else, this thing would look really bad after a while. The area is divided by a play wall, and on the top of this whole area is 6 foot of sand, so a kid really can dig. And this rock serves a number of purposes. It actually goes down 4 feet, so a kid really can dig and not find the bottom of it. But it's also designed so a child who doesn't have much upper body strength can be put in the sand with the other kids and have a comfortable place to lean. A specially designed pump was created at the top. The hetchy runs under this particular part. And we wanted to simulate the water coming from Yosemite into the San Francisco and such. And so this pump was specially designed so a person with very limited upper body strength could lean over and pump the water. It has many different ways you can get the water out, because when you have 500 kids playing around this pump at one time, it becomes an unsafe situation, so you take the pump off and just let the water come out. And you get quiet. At the bottom of this whole area is a dam. So the kids pumping and the kids at the bottom all have to learn to work together to get some water to leak in there. And this is looking back at the area. This is the grassy area that's designed as a community gathering place or a festival area, or a place that you can run programming, stretch fabric here, and put art projects, and it becomes a backdrop for anything you want to do. Family picnic near this area, as well as larger group picnic areas for 800 people. These picnic facilities were designed so people in chairs could also fully use them. When we also talk to people The second thing they wanted to do was not sit at the end of the picnic bench. They wanted to sit beside the people they came to picnic with. So we had this bench engineered so people could come up the side and sit. These are just simple things, but if we weren't working with the people, we wouldn't have known these things were important. This is a wash-up sink that you can roll up to and use. This is also something, when you start making your environments accessible and you want them to be innovative, sometimes a 10-year-old child might have to be diaper changed. You can't do that outside in the environment like you can do with an infant. So your restrooms have to have large shelves that'll handle 200 pounds so you can change your child like this. Simple water fountains and looking back at the area. All this information is contained in this book that was developed with about 136 people from around the world to see how we can better take a child's play environment and really make it accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We're now going to really stretch our technical capabilities and have two slide projectors at the same time. Our next speakers are from an architectural firm called Base, Mark Kessler and Catherine Lambert. They, and I have to apologize, I put this in the wrong phrasing in the literature that was sent out. They recently finished a project for the Tenderloin AIDS Resource Center, and that's the project they're going to talk about tonight. So hopefully we'll get our slide deck together. And Catherine was going to speak first? Okay. We're going to have sort of like Bill Crosby and Bob Miller team. Catherine will speak first, and then Mark will follow.